afternoon. Welcome to number 3 of our garden tours. I'm Adam, I'm the head gardener here at Blarney Castle and Gardens, and we're being filmed by Paul, who's our social media and marketing manager. And the first couple of tours we gave an introduction to the gardens in number 1, and number 2 we visited one of the older areas, which was the Rock Close. So this week we're going to bring you in through the Himalayan Valley, down through our Vietnamese garden and into our Fern Garden. One of the things we've noticed over the last few weeks with the quiet is all the bird song. You can probably hear it in the background. The birds are actually probably louder than me, but it's fabulous. And you probably find that in your own gardens as well. And as we're kind of walking around, we're noticing more and more wildlife, which is, I suppose, being given a bit more chance and not being scared off so quickly. Before I start, I actually just wanted to show you that we're going to look at a few more plants this week. So this is, a lot of people don't realise that Japanese maples have flowers. They're known for the leaf colour, autumn colour, but this is Acer japonica vitifolium, and you'll see them dangling down. They're not huge or highly noticeable, but when you get up close, they're absolutely stunning. You can see the contrast is beautiful, and it's something that a lot of the maples have that are often overlooked, so I just thought I'd point that out to you. We're now going to go down a little bit past one of our magnolias, and I wish we had smell-o-vision because it's also a stunning smell, but we're going to continue through a little cryptomeria archway and into the Himalayan Valley, and I'm going to stop off as we go and show you some different areas and different plants. So we're trying to film in landscape mode this week, which was requested by a few people. It's a little bit more complicated for Paul, so bear with us if things go shaky. Right. So you can see this particular magnolia we have is absolutely covered at the moment, and the scent is unbelievable. A nice open shape. I prefer these sort of open flowered magnolias. As we go down, I'll show you with a lot of different ones in flower. Over the last 10 or 15 years we've put in a lot more magnolias, and they take a few years to come, but when they do come out you can see it's worth the wait. But while we're here, I just want to show you on the map for context. So in the opening shots you saw the Blarney house here, and we've come down this route and we're going to head down along the red walk here, past the edge of our walled garden and into the Vietnamese and then the Fern Garden, which quite a few people have requested as well. So we might take a little bit longer this time. It just depends how many things I decide to talk about along the way. So we'll start moving anyway. I know that the reds don't always come out well on the cameras, but this is absolutely stunning. And the new growth, when a lot of the Japanese maples open up, is so vivid and so fresh looking. But this particular one is a stunner. Unfortunately, we don't have a name for this one. There's several different varieties have a similar looking leaf. Nothing jumps to mind right now name-wise, but it's something, if somebody particularly wants to know anything like a name that we don't have right now, you can send in a question at the end and we will try to come back with answers for you, or suggestions of similar varieties. There's one called a Zakazuki, which is a similar red, but it's a larger leaf, so this is quite a special, unusual one. You see the azaleas starting to come out as well. A lot of the rhododendron species and azaleas are all coming into bloom now. I'm one of the stars of the show on the Himalayan Valley, and the reason I've decided to do this area this week is our Rhododendron Arboreum, which is a tree rhododendron, and we estimate about 100 years old, possibly 140, 150. Probably dates to the building of the mansion, and it's colossal, so wait and see in a minute. I don't know if you can see the scale of the rhododendron on the landscape shot. We'll get a bit closer in a minute to show you, but this variety is, we suspect it's Cornish red, so Rhododendron Arboreum Cornish red, and it's one plant that's layered itself over the century, and it really forms the focal point of the Himalayan valley. But the idea of the Himalayan valley is that it's a lot of plants from the Himalayan region. It's a very broad term, but many of which are new to horticulture, so they're wild collected origin. So this area is very experimental. We're trying a lot of things, and we're sourcing plants from other botanic gardens as well as going out ourselves plant hunting. The last couple of years we've been out to Vietnam. Prior to that I was in Sikkim, and some of the plants that have come into here have come from either my own collections or things that I've swapped with other botanic gardens around the world, really. But it's testament to the original garden developers, if you like, that came up with the concept of the gardens here around the mansion, that this rhododendron's still standing, because this is, in my opinion, one of the best specimens, certainly in Ireland. But I'm going to show you a couple of other things first before we go down into there. Paul can pan as we walk down, but there's actually an old lime kiln over here, and the lime kilns are built throughout the estate. What they used to do was build a lime kiln next to where there was an outcrop of limestone, use up the source, and then move on. So lime was produced by heating the limestone to very high temperatures in the kiln. This would produce quick lime, and the quick lime was invaluable. It was used in putting down on the pastures for improving pasture and grazing and feeding the land, if you like. It was used in construction, it was used for whitewashing, it was used for treating and cleaning cesspits. It really was, you know, almost a magic remedy for so many different things. But they would, for convenience, they'd build the kiln next to the source of the limestone, and then when it was used up, the kiln would be basically abandoned and they'd go and build another one. So we actually have, I believe we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lime kilns on the estate, and this wouldn't be unusual. You'll see we've combined in here a lot of native planting with the introduced, which makes it quite a wild area, and we are very Robinsonian, as I've referenced before, and this is very much a nod to that. So you'll see right through the grass and around we've got the wild primroses, we've got introduced different varieties of primroses, we've got all the native, the bluebells, the native varieties of plants that just let go and intermingle between what we've introduced, which makes it really quite a special location. This is the Chinese introduction. Lovely dark leaf when it first opens up. Acer Campbellii subspecies sinense. And I actually collected seed of the Campbellii in Vietnam, which we have growing in our walled garden at the moment and will be moving out probably later on this year. But it's very interesting to compare what are in effect the same plant species but from different regions or locations. We'll come back down to the rhododendron in a minute because I want to show you inside as well. It's like a natural climbing frame, but I also want to show you a couple of my magnolias up here. This is only the second year this has flowered. This is Joe McDaniel, and you can see inside it's a good large flowered magnolia, and it's a stunner. As I said earlier, you have to have patience. I planted these in here probably about 7-8 years ago now as little whips, and most of them have survived and got going, and there's one or two that are really starting to put on a show. This isn't the best specimen. I'm going to show you one of my more favourite ones up here. See the scale of the rhododendron now, getting a bit of a better picture. We put this path in last year, cutting through the middle of the borders. They were never established enough before this to actually put this path in, and one of our senior gardeners, Bruno, put a lot of work into this area, so I just want to give him a bit of a nod and credit and say what a great job he's done, really. This is Magnolia Wadis memory, and when it's established and a bit bigger, it's literally like a cloud. But these are more of a stellata type, so they're much more open and loose, and it is down to personal taste, but personally I think this is one of the better ones. Can you turn around and go back, Paul? We're going to run back down to the Rhododendron Arboreum now, and I want to show you. So it's probably best if Paul turns around rather than having an accident. Last week in the Rock Close I was talking about follies and the way in the 1750s they created these garden almost ornaments that tell stories and have a little bit of a romantic feel to them, or otherworldly presence, let's say. So we plan to build something here on this site as a focal point. So you'll have to come in to see, but my idea is to combine Irish stonework with a bit of an oriental roof to create a little oriental style hut, and we have picked up some of the materials for this. The whole idea came about from buying some antique windows, so it's funny the way things develop, but you'll have to come and see in another year when it's built. You get the scale now, and it's certainly the star of the show when it's in flower, but even just as a specimen in its own right throughout the summer, people come down here and can't believe the scale and the size and the spread of this particular one. So well worth showing you. I could probably stop talking and just leave you look at it, but we've got other areas to see as well. Behind Paul there's a couple of our Vietnamese introductions, a variety of Schefflera called Schefflera macrophylla. And one of the nice things about having collected seed yourself is when you're looking at the plants growing in the gardens, it brings you back. And I can remember where I was standing on the side of a cliff face when we collected the seed for this particular Schefflera on a mountain in northern Vietnam. And it's fabulous to see them growing here in the gardens. These things reach tree proportions and they give a real tropical feel to the place. So we're going to head down further. When we go into the Vietnamese area, I'll talk a bit more about some of the collections and show you that area in a bit more detail. see our native primroses are really well established on the banks, and we stopped the use of chemicals such as Roundup as weed killer control on a lot of these areas, and everything flourished. And you can see as a result, we have to manage it by weeding out certain invasives, let's say, and choosing ones, and it is at times high maintenance, but this is the reward. Behind us as well is this is a viburnum species from Vietnam, which is really starting to get going, and I just find it fascinating watching these things develop and seeing what they turn into, really. That's Magnolia Elizabeth, which is another particularly good specimen that, again, only its second year flowering, so I'm delighted to see them starting to get established. And down in front of us, which looks like nothing, this is a variety of sedge which was actually thought to be extinct. It was only ever found in one location on an island on Loch Ness. It's Carex buxbaumii, and it was found by the Botanic Gardens on an expedition, and then the next time they went back to check it, it was gone, it was lost, and they pronounced it extinct. And one of the guys who'd been on the original expedition, it turned out, had actually brought a little bit home with him, and he said, "Oh, I have that in my garden." So they divided it up and brought some sections back to the Botanic Gardens in Glasnevin, and for, I suppose, about 10 years it remained there in pots doing very little. And I just contacted them by chance about Irish native plants in general, and I was offered a piece of this. We kept a section in our glass house and grew it on, and it set seed, so I sowed the seed. And we found, I don't know how it ever went extinct, because look at it. So we've been sharing it with other places, some of which haven't thanked us, because when it's happy, it gets very happy. But what it means is that we now have Carex buxbaumii for, certainly the foreseeable future, protected and back ready to be reintroduced, should it be possible. The wall actually here to our left is one of the outer walls of our walled kitchen garden area, where we do a lot of the in-house fruit and veg, the orchard areas, and all of our propagation. So we're going to run up the hill quickly, turn around and show you a view of the wall garden. We will get into the wall garden in the next few weeks, but I just want to give you a little taster so you can see what we'll actually be showing you later. Then we'll go into the Vietnamese. Probably show them the sign, Paul. We've started putting additional signage around the estate that explains just small bite-sized pieces of information about each area and what it historically did, what its uses were, etc. Because there's so much more here than just the castle itself. So you can see the kitchen garden sign with our gardener, and this is pretty accurate as an artist's impression as how it would have looked. And you'll see it's still very much a working garden. A lot of the fruit and the ice cream, the juice, apple juice in our cafe, all comes from produce that we actually grow here in the gardens. We've put in a lot of new apple trees in the last year, and so there'll be no shortage of apple juice in the future. But we will go into there hopefully in the next couple of weeks to give you a bit more of a look as to what else and what we're up to in the polytunnels with regards to propagation and some of the exciting things that I'm growing personally. Right, we'll head back down. How's the arm, Paul?
Absolutely killing me.
Keep going. I referred in the rock close when we were there last week to all the old views around the estate, and this is another particularly good specimen, probably 500 years, but it's very difficult to age them. But they pop up right across the estate. It's not just the rock close where you find them. can't walk past it without showing you, because I'm sure people are saying, what's that? That's an ornamental rhubarb, so Rheum palmatum. I think it's Astro sanguineum, but it's a purple leaf one. And again, it's just a great architectural, structural plant. So from this point we're going into the Vietnamese woodland. Now everything in here that's been planted is wild origin, so from the mountains of northern Vietnam. We've collected most of it ourselves. There have been donations from other gardens, and this is an ex situ conservation project. So many of the things that are being grown here are endangered in their own native habitats, and it's gardens like these that may well be the places where they're secure for the future. So we'll walk in. I'm going to point out a few things as we go, but I really want to show you our Vietnamese Cardamom Farmers Hut. So this is one of the many Schefflera macrophylla we have growing, and the interesting thing about seed grown plants is every one of them is slightly different genetically. So we get ones with darker stems, lighter stems, larger leaf, slightly fleshier leaves, and the Scheffleras tend to be quite promiscuous, so sometimes they've crossed naturally with other varieties, and that makes it extremely interesting. We're also finding that some of them are hardier than others, so one will go through frost no problem, another one might get burnt or even killed. But these things are going to get huge, and I'm really excited as to, coming back and showing you in 3 or 4 years' time. But there's so many interesting things in here, it's actually hard to choose. This has a great story. This is now called Disanthus whartonii. So Disanthus whartonii. It was called Rhododendron Arboreum. The people that discovered it actually named it after two people. Their guide, who was also my guide in Vietnam, so Rhododendron, and then Whartonii from the person who was with them assisting them on the trip, which was Peter Wharton, another plant hunter. So the name was given because they thought it was a new species. It was then found actually to be part of the Disanthus, which is the Himalayan family, and so unfortunately poor Ook lost his moment of history. He's quite philosophical about it, but Whartonii stuck. But what's fabulous about this is they grow to tree-sized proportions in Vietnam, but look at the colour. You see this purple undersides are just stunning, and it's a nice attractive plant in itself, but in a few years time when it's grown on a bit more, again it's so exciting with all these new things. They're new to Ireland, they're new to horticulture, so for us it's a complete experiment a lot of the time to see what they're going to do. This is another nice one Paul can just show you on the way past. It's a type of rubus, so related to the blackberry, but Rubus lineatus, and it's another stunner. I can smell, again, you need the smell-o-vision, I can smell the wild garlic underfoot, and this is natural, native, and you can see it's just coming into flower. But one of the stars of the show in here is this, which is Aesculus wangii. So it's a chestnut, a conker tree in effect, but they're highly endangered in the wild. It's only known in, I think, 2 locations at this stage. Around 30 to 40 individual trees make up the entire known population, and the last time we visited to collect seed and we visited with botanists from the Institute of Biology and Horticulture in Hanoi in Vietnam, and they actually found that within 18 months of their last previous visits, more trees had been cut down and more cardamom farming was taking place. So it's a real challenge. These things are right on the edge at the moment, and growing them in places like this not only helps to ensure their survival, but it also, we find out additional information about what their tolerances are, where they can survive, what temperatures they can take, things like this. But stunning tree in itself. So this is our Cardamom Farmers Hut, and it's an exact copy of one that we actually stayed in one night on the mountains in northern Vietnam when we were plant hunting. We had the fire going inside, and all of our guides and porters actually slept inside, and we had tents laid out outside. So I wanted to convey kind of the feeling of the Vietnamese woodland, and this is very much a part of it. So we then have the information sign, which just discusses cardamom farming and the impact it's having on native woodland and flora and fauna as well, and talks about, not just in Vietnam but worldwide, the impact that agriculture is having, you know, on these wilder areas as the population expands really and encroaches. So inside we've got the little sleeping area. This is actually the drying rack where they would dry the cardamom pods over the fire, and it's a high value crop for them, and you know, they don't do it for no reason at all. But simple basic setup. Before we go any further, this is another one that is very unusual, and it's worth showing you just because of the style. We only have one of these at the moment out. This is Bucklandia. They're very difficult to grow from seed. We have, I think, 3 seedlings currently growing in our glass houses. So again, this is quite a special tree. We bought this one because I wanted to have one specimen outside growing, and I had to bring it over from Wales in the UK in the back of a van in order to get it here. But well worth it, and it's doing very well in the woodland location. We're now going to go up and through into the Fern Garden, which I know a lot of you requested and were waiting for. So Paul will just follow me and we'll go through what's going to be a grove of Schefflerers in years to come, up the steps and over, and then we'll enter into the top of the Fern Garden. See, there's plenty of potential for more planting, and when we go in the wall garden, a lot of the things that are growing in there will eventually end up in these areas. So we're now in the southern hemisphere in Australia, New Zealand, and the tree ferns. So these are mostly Dicksonia antarctica, and to put these in context, allow about an inch a year for growth. So this one could be approaching 100 years old. Now, we've established this in what we suspect was an old limestone quarry, and when we go in properly and look, you'll see why it works so well. But this has been, I suppose, 12 years, 13 years in the making. It's still not finished, and it was my first kind of real design project when I started here, so it's still my favourite garden area. I'm very fond of it, and it's a lot of people's favourites, which is always great to hear. So the fern garden is designed to be discovered. So the way I want it is that people come up these steps. You're already in the upper fern garden and you're totally unaware of what's going to open up in front of you. So have a look.
Now you can see the quarry site opens up into what is a natural amphitheatre, and we've taken that and planted it up. We only added the waterfall feature in, I suppose, 4 years ago, as it is a gradual development. And then across in the distance you'll see a little bridge section. That just goes over what I call the ravine and links into the Vietnamese garden we were in. And then we're now in the process of building a new boardwalk and sort of observation deck on the top of the cliff, which is hopefully when we reopen we'll actually be able to get on and finish it, but we'll go up on it anyway, and I can kind of show you what we're doing and what I want to achieve. The stone steps that lead down into the fern garden just in front of you, our stonemason John built these a few years back, and we had a lot of people climbing up and down the cliff, so we figured we'd better try and do something to make it a bit safer. So John took on the challenge, and I think about a week after he'd finished it looked like they'd been there forever, so it's a fabulous job. The landscape mode is a bit harder to shoot in. Poor Paul's got to keep his arm up in the air all the time, so he's doing a great job, to be fair to him. We're just going to sneak in for a look. You want to pause it and have a fiddle? No? So this is Manfred Farah, who's responsible for this work. I asked him if he'd pop up just to say hello, really, because it's good to give people credit for the work they do. And you can see the construction that is ongoing, and as I say, hopefully we'll be able to get back to it properly in the coming weeks. But if Paul wants to look over the top of the banister, you get the effect of the waterfall coming out underneath.
for this week. I'm not sure Paul can hold the camera much longer, so I think we'll leave it at that. And I just want to say, thanks very much, and I hope you enjoyed that bit more of a snapshot of the gardens. And we'll continue again next week with a couple more areas and a bit of background. And feel free to ask any questions or make suggestions as to other areas you'd like to see. So thank you very much.